Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. I'm going to do a mishmash at this talk. I had two pens I needed to clean out. They've been inked up for a while and I wasn't happy with the ink and pen combination, so I decided they needed to be cleaned, and in the process of cleaning them I decided they needed to be disassembled to do a thorough cleaning. So you may recognize this pen here primarily because of the two rubber O-rings on the piston. So this is the Caliarts Ego. This is the first version of that pen, and this is completely disassembled. You need a wrench to remove this assembly from the bottom of the barrel. You can see those little slots there, and the end, the piston cap unscrews from this piece here. The cap on the pen is a solid piece, so there's no opening here, so there's no airflow. There's a little piece at the top, the finial, which holds the clip onto the top of the cap, similar to like a Model 20 Franklin Christoph. This is your clear barrel. So when I do the second pen, the 698, you'll notice some differences here. The entire piston assembly comes out the back, and you have to go through a process of unscrewing it and moving the piston, because if you just try to unscrew it with all those threads there, eventually the piston will reach an end and then you can't unscrew anymore. So, but everything cleaned up very nicely. I had Noodler's Legal Lapis in here, which is a bulletproof ink from Noodler's, and as you can see there was no staining or anything, and that ink has been in here for maybe 2 or 3 months from the time I did the first review of the pen. So switching over to another pen, you may recognize this is the Wing Sung 698, and I haven't taken the cap apart before, but as you can see, this is that finial top which has those engravings in it. Nice solid piece of brass here. Here's your clip, and there's a screw which sits underneath of the blind cap. So the blind cap is a pressure fit inside of this outer cap, and the screw, so the assembly would be put the clip on, put the finial on, then put the screw in through the cap and tighten it up to just a flathead screw, and then push in the cap liner at the end. This is the barrel. So this pen disassembles without the use of a tool. So that's where the piston turning knob just snaps into this collar, and when it's snapped into the collar, then it screws on and off the barrel. I think there's a way of removing this cap, yes. So you can take that apart. And there's another piece. So I talked before about number of pieces in a pen, and this has a lot of pieces in it. It's a lot of engineering. Manufacturing is not simple, but at the end of the day, I find the pen to be very well made. One of the only downsides I find of the design is this brass ring or gold-plated brass ring, which fits between the section and the barrel. It's loose and it comes apart, so it's easy to lose in case you disassemble it and don't realize that when you're all done you don't know where that ended up. The other thing is when you unscrew the back of the barrel, the piston has to come out through the front. So you need to take out the feed nib section and whatever. There's a nice O-ring at the section, which is nice to seal it up. And I think you'll notice there's a little color left in the feed, and I soaked this in ammonia for a day, an ammonia solution. So this was just Seitz and Kringer Dark Orchid in there, and it wasn't in there for more than a couple weeks. This is a pen that I put the medium nib in that I had trouble with it working in this pen, and I'm going to do some more research on it, but my supplier in China mentioned that the medium nib only works with the soft fine nib feeds. Apparently the feeds for the regular extra fine nib are different than the fine nib, and you would think that because the fine nib because it's a little bit soft, puts down more ink and therefore would require more flow, which then also should relate to the medium nib. So I have the medium nib in another pen and it's working fairly well. So that's it. So I just wanted to show you how these things disassemble. And it's very easy to reassemble them, you know, lubricate all the parts. Here the piston is just molded in place. It doesn't have those O-rings, so in the Caliart they actually give you extra O-rings that if you need to replace them, kind of like what you can do with Noodler piston fillers. So hopefully you've enjoyed this little teardown of two interesting pens. One thing about Caliart's Ego is it comes with this wrench and two replacement O-rings, which are kind of white, so you're going to lose those red ones. And the instructions all in Chinese show, I'm assuming, lubricating the area here where the piston is and the O-rings are. You also notice that it doesn't show removing the cap, it just shows unscrewing the section. So removing the cap, which screws on, was a little bit of a challenge to get everything lined up and put it together, but you know, with some patience and some care, it was able to be reassembled. So the two pens have been thoroughly cleaned, reassembled, silicone grease. As you can see, the piston comes all the way up. As I mentioned, it was a little challenge to put this back together again, but once you get everything in place, it works nicely. You just have to take your time and think about how you position parts, and obviously when you unscrew the piston mechanism, it's the opposite way that you would think. So usually turn to the right is righty-tighty, lefty-loosen. So you actually got to go to the right to unloosen. So it's a counter thread. And that's because when you turn the piston knob clockwise or to the right, the piston goes down. And so you don't want it to unscrew the mechanism. Sorry, when you do it, when you screw the piston counterclockwise, it goes down. Clockwise, it goes up. So you don't want it to unloosen by turning to the right. That works very well there. And the same thing with this piston mechanism, but you got to pull it out. And you can see how tight that airflow is. I mean, if you push the piston down, the pressure that you're building up in here just pushes the piston back. So a lot of it has to do with the lubrication, the fact that everything is now nice and tight and sealed with silicone grease. So both of those are now ready to re-ink when I'm ready to do that. We've come to the end of another video. Thank you for watching. Enjoy. All your pens, inks, nibs, and paper experiences. This is the end. Jim Morrison was very good at explaining that. Until we meet again, bye.